Okay, so what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to look at creating some textures or seamless textures, tillable textures that we can use to plug into Mudbox, and it's going to allow us to texture and surface and detail up our characters. So there are a number of techniques that we can use for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a few images off the internet, and then we'll look at a few different techniques that we can use to create a tillable texture, and then a few less so obvious ways that we can create tillable textures and different techniques that we can use to edit those images that might otherwise not seem usable initially. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Command O, and let's see what I've downloaded. I've been on Google, had a quick look, and there's a few textures that I'm basically want to create a tillable tree bark. That's what I'm looking to create. I've got some that are tiled already, some that are less so tiled. So what I'm looking to do is find a texture that I could use to create a tillable texture. Let's have a look at this for the time being. This is okay. Right, so if you hit Command Option, I'm working on a Mac, and it'll bring up the image size. So what we need to do is we need to see this. Ideally, it doesn't have to be square, but for the purposes of this, I am going to set it up as being a square image. So it's 512 by 512, this image that I'm working with, and this image here is a totally different size aspect ratio. I'm just going to paste that in, and I'm just going to, my settings might differ. I'm just dragging down to scale this uniformly. Depending on your settings, you might have to hold Shift to scale it uniformly, but if I hold that, it just allows it to go kind of a bit apeshit, so I kind of don't bother. Like I say, I'm looking to create this as a tillable texture, and for this I'm wanting to create the moss as like a tillable element almost. I'm just going to use this crop tool and hit enter on the keyboard, and it's going to crop this image down. So if you remember this image, if I hit Command Option and I, it's 512 by 512. So the next tool that I'm going to use is go into Filter, Other, and Offset. And what I'm going to do is type in the value half of 512 by 512. So in this case, 256 by 256. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a horizontal and a vertical offset within the images. I'm going to hit OK. And now what I've got is, I've got the image, it's kind of been like pushed around, jumbled up a little bit. So I'm going to use a few different tools. You know, you could use maybe the clone stamp to fix these joins here, or you could use the patch tool. Kind of cool. So basically how the patch tool will work is it'll grab bits from another part of the image, but it'll blend those pixels around it to try to seamlessly merge or create less of a noticeable join. So that's what I'm doing with this. So it's really useful. Where I mean, you can see there it's really different, the colours that I'm grabbing, but if I grab there, you can see it does try to like blend those pixels, a bit of colour matching. It's a really cool, clever algorithm that Adobe have got built into this. So you can just grab these little patches and pieces. Okay, so let's just pull this. You can see there that's really useful, because it's, in terms of how the colours are blending, it's looking around, and it's as well based on this the kind of bokeh, the blur within this image. It's trying to match that as well, which is really clever. Okay, so we've kind of got this bit here working okay. So what I'll do is I will quickly Command C and V, hit Command T, and then we'll just flip it horizontally. That'll do. So it's mirrored. It's not particularly elegant at the minute. So again, we've got to remember that we're looking to create this tillable texture, and for this, I'd mentioned that I was looking to create like tree bark, but this is going to be like a mossy part of the tree bark. So this is, you know, I'm just being quite liberal. I'm not being too crazy with it. The ideal is that you don't create an obvious join with it. That what you're trying to do is create a texture that doesn't stick out as a tillable texture. You know, it's quite natural. in how it's being created, and that in itself is a huge skill to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to kind of use this brush and just build this up. So largely it's really simple technique to use. It's not a super advanced technique or anything like that, but it's a really useful way of being able to create tileable textures, or in this case it's going to allow us to create a tileable brush. So I'm just going to keep building this up and building this up and building this up. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that. Let's say, for argument's sake, we're happy with this as an image. Let's just go to Window, Layers, and we'll just quickly merge these together. And again, make sure that this is cropped down. Filter, Other, Offset, and let's reset this back to 0. Well, we'll toggle between 0 and this offset. So again, you see there, I've put it back to 0, and we've created this join. So let's go back this to 0 and the vertical to 256. We've got this join here, so hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at using the patch tool to, work quite well in blending up those colours. Very useful little tool to use. And anywhere else, I mean, that this is going to draw your eye, because you've got to think this is going to be repeated over a large number of sort of tiles, and this is going to draw your eye to it. So what we'll look to do maybe is just remove this, because again it's on the opposite side. So we'll try to kind of quite obvious there. Okay, and then same again here. Let's see, there we go. So okay, let's maybe let's just maybe pull this over to here. Okay, so you can see that works quite well. It doesn't look too mirrored. Let's go back to filter, and again it's this sort of little juggling kind of thing of checking the offsets to 0. Let's see, is there any kind of obvious seam that we can see? 256, is there an obvious seam? You can see here it looks obviously mirrored. You can see it's pretty obvious there. So let's just hit OK, and then use our magic patch tool to create a less obvious area of repetition within this texture. Okay, let's go back to filter and back to offset, and then let's 0 this out so we don't have too obvious a join. 256 in here. Can we see an obvious seam? This looks kind of mirrored, so let's just use this little patch tool. So it kind of hides that a little bit. We're looking for things that are going to lead your eye to it. I think this should be okay as a tileable texture, so by not deleting it. What we're going to do now is let's just hit Command J, and that's going to duplicate the layer, and let's just pull this out just a sec, and then we'll just offset this texture, because basically this is what's going to happen is when these textures are sort of stacked next to one another, when you put them into, say, Mudbox or ZBrush or whatever, duplicate layers, just the same as hitting Command J. Let's just offset this and then just use this crop tool so we can see what we're going to get. You can see there largely that's not too bad of a repeating texture. You know, you would just zoom in to see if there was any obvious joins, and we would then we'd just go back and use the offset tool to kind of remove those. So that's one way that we can create tileable textures. So what I'm going to do is just hit Command Shift S and save this as JPEG in the stencil folder, and this is just going to be called moss. Okay, so that's how you'd go about creating tileable textures, and you could use that for a range of different materials, not just moss, bricks. You could use it for fabrics, you could use it for pretty much anything, skin, things like that, different tileable elements that you think are going to be useful for creating surfacing techniques, not just color, but also adding relief and additional detail to your object. So that's one technique. Okay, so in the next video, what we're going to look at is we're going to grab a few images just from random locations in Newcastle and have a look at how we can go about turning them from just regular photos into textures. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.